Welcome to this episode of the People Dividend Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Horne, and I am thrilled to have in the virtual studio today Ron Montero, who is a CPA, CMA, a speaker, trainer, and all that CPA and CMA is finance and money, is a speaker, trainer, and author with a passion for transforming workplaces and helping people love what they do. And we're going to talk about his new book, and I'm going to let him introduce that so he can be its cheerleader and its hero all at the same time. Ron Montero was born and raised in Nairobi. He moved to Toronto, where he lives now, and despite challenges with social skills and a profound, not just the normal, everyday fear of public speaking, he excelled as a finance professional and rose through the corporate ranks at Kraft. There, he not only had a career path that really fueled him and supported his what he needed to overcome his anxieties and build lasting confidence. He launched his own company in 2021 with a mission to inspire individuals and teams to embrace every day of the week with enthusiasm. His keynote speeches and training sessions have reached organizations such as Walmart, Kraft Heinz, Blue Rock Therapeutics, which is a division of Bayer, and the Four Seasons Hotels. Ron continues to empower individuals to find fulfillment and create impact in their careers. And I'll give you some contact information about Ron a little later, but we'll have it all in the show notes. So Ron, speaker, trainer, author, Ron Montero, welcome. Say a few words about yourself to the audience, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for that very kind introduction. So excited to be on your podcast. And I think for me, I've gone through a 20-year career, and I started in finance and accounting. And as you mentioned, I was very shy, but I somewhat by accident landed at Kraft Foods. And what was really interesting is Kraft Foods had this phenomenal, model where they actually focused on people development. And I would say my leaders actually believed in me more than I believed in myself when I first started. And it was such an amazing culture to be a part of because I was pushed out of my comfort zone, but pushed not too far where it wasn't supportive, but pushed in a way that I grew. And so that fear of public speaking that I talked about, by the end of my 15-year stint at Kraft, I was actually a confident speaker. And then I got to go to other organizations, and I saw that piece missing, that well-rounded development, program. And one of the leaders at Kraft used to use this term: I want to help people build the resumes they never have to use. And it's always stuck with me. And so I've tried to say, how do I bring what I learned into all these other companies? And now, after my finance career, I decided to start my own training company, speaking. And I really try to say, here's all the gifts I've had in my career. How can I pay them forward? And especially in this world where it's like, hybrid or virtual, or it's very hard to engage teams, but it is possible. And that's my message.
Ron, really amazing story to hear about Kraft Heinz. Were they two separate companies, Kraft and Heinz? Was it Kraft and then Heinz, or was there a merger? Did you work on that merger of equals, or was it an acquisition? How would it be described?
Yeah, so when I joined, it was Kraft Foods, and Kraft Foods was basically a company, and about 2012 they split with a company called Mondelez. That was a split, but in 2014 or 15 they got acquired.
And that's a global food brand too, Mondelez, right?
Absolutely. So
Right.
phenomenal brands, phenomenal company. But
Right.
around 2014-15, it was acquired by Heinz, which was owned by 3G Capital.
I see.
And so almost overnight, the culture changed from what I knew it was. And so I left around 2015 when that changed. And at the time, it was changed to Kraft Heinz.
I see. And that's what I was thinking, because I'm locating your growth story at Kraft. And was that in Toronto as well? Is that where it started? I'm trying to think about, how location plays a role in addressing some of the topics you bring.
Yeah, no, I think it does play a role because the beauty of Kraft Canada, it was an entity on its own. It had its own culture, and it was small enough but big enough to have an impact. And, sometimes in Kraft worldwide, thousands and thousands of employees.
Right.
For the most part, Kraft Canada was contained within one building, a couple of manufacturing sites, one sales office. And it was a really amazing microcosm of the total company, but you still were able to connect with people up and down the organization.
That's great. And so that gave you a lot of exposure. And you really grew your career then in this Kraft Canada. And you attribute, and you attribute a lot of your success to learning there, being developed there, facing and conquering some of your fears as you rose through the ranks of organizations. So what are some of the key lessons that, our audience, our HR leaders, our business leaders, what could they take from your experience? Because now you've launched this, your learning business, a mission to inspire individuals and teams. What are some of the lessons that our audience could take from your experiences, either as an HR leader or as a manager in developing and cultivating talent?
I think the biggest lesson I have is that organizations can develop a continuous learning culture if they invest time and effort into it. So it was a phenomenal program, but it took a lot of effort. And I'll give you an example. So I was on the finance side for most of my career. At a certain point, when I hit director level, I was actually in charge of staffing and talent development for finance. So a big part of my responsibility, my compensation, my rating at the end of the year was not just my own performance in my day job, but it was what have I done to help build the leadership of the future at Kraft Canada. And for example, what we would have is we'd have every person in finance talk about what are the next 3 jobs that they'd like to have within the company. And then not just aspirational, we say, what are the skills they need? And then we'd almost try and map the development plan to the skills needed. So for example, in my situation, I was told pretty directly, I didn't have presence in meetings. And, a little bit tough feedback, but feedback in a way that was, okay, here's where you are. Here's what we're going to do to help you get over it. So I was paired with a coach, a mentor, and put in these programs to say, Ron can get over this development need. And I passed it. And so in the end, I was given more leadership roles because I invested in myself. So it was very much a culture where folks were encouraged to take control of their own career, and the tools were at our disposal to use if we wanted. And so again, phenomenal culture, and each function had their version of that, and it laddered up to the total company. And that's why so many people in that organization, I did 15 years, many did 20, 25, and it wasn't what I call a stagnant career. It was a career where you're developing all the time. And I probably did 7 jobs in 15 years there. And then when I contrast to my other companies, sometimes I would hit this plateau where I felt like I was pretty comfortable in my job, but there wouldn't be that next job. And I'm not talking just promotions. I'm talking lateral jobs, which encourage creativity and learning and growth and all these things. So I think it was a beautiful culture that never allowed you to get stagnant, if that makes sense.
Of course, yes. Thinking about it now, this is all going on in the 2000s, 2010. It's all occurring, 15 years in the past. And I've been thinking so much about the role of AI in development and coaching and learning. I mean, having been a learning leader in a lot of big organizations or human resources executive in a few, it's certainly something that I give a lot of consideration to. I think over the last, the audience probably knows, over the last 8 or 9 months, I've addressed 5 or 6 conferences on the topic of AI and people and culture. In fact, one yesterday that was live streamed out of San Francisco, sponsored by TrustMe.ai and Golden Gate University and some other partners. And, AI is having a big impact on industry today. You think about the Bay Area, Meta, Salesforce, Workday, have all announced cuts as a result of AI. What does AI bring us? AI brings us efficiency. AI brings us innovation. It brings us personalization. And what it also brings us, and I write about this in the People Dividend, or certainly speculate on it, is it creates the erosion of middle management. So you had someone that cared about you or cared enough about their own politics and their own job to do things right. Uh, but, most managers are working managers now. Spans of control have really shifted. And it's hard, companies don't like to put people in, 5-day training programs or 2-week training programs. I used to lead executive development at, among other organizations. One was Marriott International. We used to run, 4-week residential programs. 1-week residential programs for people, talent they wanted to develop, and also in a company that had very long talent development cycles. So all of that said, given, I just had a book chapter come out in an academic book on AI and people and culture. But given what you've, given this historical perspective now, what do you think the chances of this is happening in organizations? Or maybe if that's too pessimistic of an outlook, what does it take for a manager to say, I'm going to invest in this person, besides it's going to make my life better? What do you think, Ron?
Yeah, no, I love your perspective. And look, when I first joined Kraft, it was a 3-day management program, and we're off site and doing all these things. So times have changed. I agree. But I still think you can really develop people through micro learning. And, it's a big trend now to say, look, instead of a full day training program, maybe it's a 1-hour lunch and learn that you do once a week, and you have somebody who's passionate about it. So let's say you had somebody who's really good with AI, they can lead a lunch and learn. And the next month or next week, somebody can learn presentation skills. And you can even leverage AI to do that. So for example, PowerPoint, or even there's another program called Udemy, which coaches your presentation skills. You literally record, and it helps you say, hey, what are the filler words and what are the speed? So I think there's a beautiful opportunity to take the best of both worlds, to say, look, we can still do this, but do it in a way that works for today. And I totally agree with you. I went to a small company where I was a working manager. And so I'm not investing days and months at a time, but I am investing the micro moments. And, building trust, it could just be as simple as, hey, Mike, how's your day going today? Just a simple conversation, or how can I help? Right? It doesn't have to be this big flamboyant program. It's like, what makes sense for a given company, and what embraces AI, but also thinks about, what about the human part of that? How can I bring the best of both worlds together? So I think it's a tremendous opportunity.
Oh, that's great. I'm so glad to hear that. And I assume that many of these experiences contributed to what we're really here to discuss with my audience today. And that is I'm going to still say it's a new book, 2024. It's a new book, Love Mondays, which is a proven process to bring joy back into your work week. Well, tell us all about it, Ron Montero.
Yeah, so over my career, I've always heard, and you're probably the same, oh, it's only Monday, or then Wednesday, oh, it's hump day. People start to get a little excited. And then by Friday, the joy is palpable. And, look, I'm a math guy. I don't want to be happy 2 days a week and unhappy 5 days a week. So I landed at Kraft, and I actually loved most of my Mondays and every other days. So I tried to say, what were the things that helped me get there from my perspective, as well as what did the leaders do at that company to make me want to go into, like, if Mike, I visited your house, I would check if there was Kraft products in your fridge. I had that much loyalty. So my provocation is to say, how can I help even just one person take a little bit more control of their careers, their lives? And in one of the other companies I used to sit beside this lady. She used to work 14 hours a day, and she would wait until retirement, and she still had 15 years left, Mike. And I said, I would rather find something that's less paying but more joyous. And so it's all about, okay, what did I do to find more joy in my life? How can I share those lessons? And then how can I share lessons from a leader's perspective? And lastly, I've had this amazing opportunity to interview 20 what I call Monday Mavericks, people who love what they do, whether they're a teacher, a Buddhist monk, a CEO, there's all kinds of professions. And the message is we all have that at our disposal if we put in the work. So it's been a phenomenal process for me, and I'm still finding more joy on my Mondays. I'm still not perfect. I'm still learning, and so it's been an amazing journey to share with people, to give them hope, to give them some inspiration.
Well, I love the organization of the book, and I think it makes it very accessible for those who want to pick it up on Amazon. The first part is around what Ron describes as his 4-step process to loving your Mondays, about purpose, bridging, boats, muscle. And then in the second part, it's a guide to helping your team love their Mondays, trust, vision, big goals, making it fun, fostering relationships, being conscious of that leadership energy, creating that sort of esprit de corps and teamwork. And then he does this phenomenal reports, these interviews of his Monday Mavericks. So let's talk a little, Ron, about part 1 in the 4-step process to loving your Mondays.
Sure. And so, again, I grew up in Kenya, and I grew up in this family where my parents moved from Kenya to Canada, not much money in their pockets. And the whole thing was, how do we move to Canada for our kids' education? So, I became an accountant, my brother an engineer, my other brother an actuary, and my sister a teacher. We followed very traditional paths, but it was more like, let's get a career rather than what is the best fit career for us. And there's nothing wrong with that. It was perfect transition. But the book really stops to say, what is our purpose? And look, purpose, whatever you want to put attached to that particular word, it's what was Mike meant to do? What's Ron meant to do? What's somebody else meant to do, such that it's actually a lot of joy to do work, such that you're excited on Monday. So it really starts with uncovering our purpose. We use a phenomenal little framework called Ikigai, which is a Japanese concept. You may have heard of it. And it asks 4 simple questions. What do you love to do? What does the world need? What can you get paid for? Because we all have bills to be paid. And what are you good at? And if you can find the intersection of those 4, you found your Ikigai, you found your purpose. So it starts with purpose. It then goes to building your bridge. So for me, it was bridging from a finance and accounting career to what I do now, which is speaking and training. Then it's, step 3 is burn the bolts. It's like, hey, you're ready to go to this next phase. You're going all in. And then the last one is exactly what you were talking about with AI. The world is changing. Let's be flexible. Let's adapt to our environment. So it steps through my journey, as well as some exercises for everybody to say, okay, if you're not quite 100% happy on a Monday, what are some steps to go there, right? And it could be a 10-year journey. It could be a 1-year journey. Everybody's journey is a little different.
Excellent. That's a great way to frame that. And then you extend this to helping leaders to guide their teams to love Mondays. Tell me about that.
What I did, Mike, is I thought through my career and I said, look, I had this wonderful, somewhat accidental stint at Kraft where I landed there. It's not, I remember my boss saying, hey, I don't think you're qualified, but I'll take a leap of faith in you. And it turned into a 15-year leap of faith. So I tried to say, what were the conditions present there and some other areas? And that's where I boiled it down to what I call my 7 key principles for leadership. And I'm not going to go through all of them unless you want me to, but it all starts with building trust. As a leader, how do you really care about a person? Not just what they can do from a work functional standpoint, but what are they all about? What do they love outside of work? What makes them tick? How do I motivate them? How do I coach them? And again, that's the type of leadership I saw in that company. And I realized many people might not have ever experienced that form of leadership. So how can I share it? So it's really 7 steps. And again, they're nothing grand. It's like the daily actions we take make a massive difference. Me going into my team members, doing a little walk around and saying, Mike, how you doing? James, how you doing? Sarah, what's going on today? And being perceptive to say, oh, there's a bit of a different look on Sarah's face. Let me go a little deeper and see, can I help? And so it's really bringing that human part back to it, but it's also one of them is create BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals, which is what are we striving towards? Whether you're in finance, I was in accounting and I still had a BHAG. Think about that, Mike. And so that's where, for me, that middle section is really powerful to say, what can we as leaders do? Another thing I'm obsessed with is what is the leadership energy around, right? Think about what's going on in the world right now. I'm in Canada. I think you're in the US, Mike. And think about how hard that is for employees, for leaders. And if you can be a little bit that eye in the storm, it's really, really powerful. So that middle section, it means so much to me because I think I had the gift of being in that environment.
It really all begins with trust
100%.
from day one.
From day one. And I always say, look, I've worked for many different companies, right? And, again, we talked about the craft where you have, hey, everybody goes out to lunch and maybe you're at a fancy steakhouse, but I've also had very simple, let's all go to the cafeteria, bring our own lunch and spend time together. I've also had the contrast where it's like, hey, Ron, get in your cube and crank out the numbers. And there's basically, just a hello and a goodbye. And so it's really around, again, it doesn't have to be a huge amount of time. It could just be a short little message or a pop by somebody's desk or a 15-minute virtual phone call. Like things like that make a big, big difference. And I love what you said. It starts from day one. And, I've had some really cool opportunities to meet these leaders. One of the fellows in the back of the book, his name is Jim Ailing, former president of Starbucks, CEO of Tom's Shoes. And my very first call with him, and somebody introduced me to him, he genuinely cared about me. He's like, Ron, tell me about yourself. And I could picture him leading at all these other companies with that level of humility, despite his stature. Right. And that's where, for me, it's like the traditional pyramid of an organization. It's kind of flipping it. Right. And many of the folks in the back are servant leaders. Say, what can I do for my people as opposed to what can my people do for me?
Yeah, that's why I love that expression, being a day one or something, because I love this slang, this informal expression that, means that someone beyond time, that it's the very beginning. And so it's a nice way of thinking about being a day one for someone and how that continues to grow prosperity, what I would call the People Dividend, my newest book, in organizational life. And need to be all about creating this as you create these environments where I think in a way, Ron, you're promoting an engagement agenda and so critical to innovation and every good thing we know in an organization. And I think it's that engagement, of course, where people release their discretionary efforts, where it creates esprit de corps. And in some of these very strong culture companies, which I imagine Kraft is a sort of a strong culture company as you've described it, and I've had other experiences around that organization as one of these strong culture companies, much like where I led Great Place to Work campaigns at Marriott, at Genentech, and some of these very strong, that's not the right word, but very powerful culture companies. And, if we think about what 2025 is in human resources, with the exception of some odd stuff that's going around about diversity and inclusion and probably in the wrong direction because we have so much evidence around how inclusion creates value in organizations and creates economic prosperity. I don't know who'd be against that. So as we move forward with all of this, as you think about engagement and you think about Love Mondays, what led you to Love Mondays? I mean, the title. I heard you express it as opposed to, we got all this dread around Monday and what it's like. And how do I maintain that personally over the weekend so I don't have the Sunday scaries?
Yeah, no, look, it's something that people can quickly understand. So the title Love Mondays, I'm not exactly sure how it originated, but I used to have a friend who worked with me and he used to say, make Mondays as exciting as Fridays. So that was one of the other potential titles. I love it. But look, I would go on vacation and I would ask people and people would say, yeah, I love that title. People understand it. So I was going for something that people really understand really quickly. And I love what you talked about with engagement. What are the things we can do to, engage our people? what are the ways? So that's why one of the things I have is like, let's create some fun. Let's not just have like a culture where you just grind it out. What is some fun we're going to inject into this environment, even in challenging times? And by the way, I love the title of your podcast because I totally agree. It's a dividend. It pays back. And the opposite of that is a tax. And one of the books I love is The Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey, which talks about how when you invest from day one, as we've talked about, it's like a dividend, right? So I absolutely love, the title because it makes so much sense to me.
I used to do a lot of work with Stephen Covey, not MR, his son. And it always brings a certain joy to me. I was in a lot. And the long and short of it, when I ran executive development at Marriott International, the Marriotts are devout LDS. I mean, it's public about that. And as was Steve Covey, because he taught at BYU. And so I had a lot of close-up and personal experiences with Steve because he was instrumental in a lot of our residential executive development. So happy to think about that, happy to think about engagement, happy to encourage everyone to love Mondays and to pick it up on Amazon. And Ron, Ron Montero, just as we wrap up, I mean, you're going to be able to find Ron on LinkedIn and check him out at his website, KICTINC.com, kicking.com. How do you pronounce that, Ron?
Yeah, no, that's when I first started my business, that was my business title, and it's a bit of a planned word. So kicked. I'm a soccer guy as well, so a little bit of that involved, but it actually stood for, and I almost never talk about anymore, Kilimanjaro Institute of Coaching and Training. And again, back to my roots in East Africa. And it was, in my mind, the vision of up and down. It's not a straight path up the mountain. And so it was a little bit for me. And I remember talking to a mentor, and he's like, just shorten it. And he didn't mean in a bad way. But for me, I come back to it and say, look, the journey is, it's cliche, but enjoy the journey as you go into this different path. Because when I first started, 20 to 25 years in finance, and now I'm starting to try to become a trainer and speaker. You can imagine the reactions I got when I first started, right? But that was my vision as I started it. So frankly, I haven't been asked about that in a long time. So thank you for reminding me.
No, it's great. It's really wonderful. And you'll find all that in the show notes. So once again, I want to thank Ron Montero, speaker, trainer, author, passion for transforming workplaces, author of Love Mondays. I want to thank you so much for being a guest and sharing your insights and your wisdom with our audience, Ron. And again, just thank you so much.
Mike, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being on your podcast, and it's great to see the phenomenal body of work you have in this industry. I love how you talk about working with Stephen Covey, and even now I can see you're doing AI keynotes and stuff. So very, very inspiring to me, Mike. Thank you.
Keep growing and learning. All right. That's my message with Ron Montero. Thank you again so much. Until the next episode of the People Dividend, stay well.